Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Online Warriors podcast. I'm Illeagle 86. I'm joined as always by my good friends Techtic and Nerdbomber. It's cold and it's dark and it's winter. Unless you're in the southern hemisphere, in which case life is good for you right now.
But it's getting colder and darker because we have passed the winter solstice.
Right, the equinox. What do you prefer, equinox or solstice?
Solstice.
I like equinox. It sounds more scientific.
Equinox? No, now equinox has been forever associated with a car. So now I just think of a Chevy. And I'm like, oh, well, it's
Not
the winter
sponsor.
equinox. Yeah, not a sponsor.
Yeah, Chevy not.
I mean,
not
it's just kind of like a mid car. It's not like a hot car or anything like that.
A solstice sounds like a pagan ritual.
Wasn't there a Kia Solstice, though?
It's no.
There was a Kia Solstice, wasn't there?
I thought it was the Solterra. I'm not going to Google this now. It's not worth my Google.
I'm Googling
Not a
this.
sponsor.
Yeah, Kia also not a sponsor. People think we've been purchased by Big Auto.
It was a Pontiac Solstice.
Pontiac Solstice.
So again, isn't Pontiac owned by GM as well, or wasn't it?
I was going to say Pontiac's gone the way of the dodo. First of all,
They sponsor
it was a
us.
fancy car though. It was like a convertible sports car.
Pontiac. I do remember the Pontiac Solstice. Oh my God, the sports car. I wanted one.
Wasn't that on My Cousin Vinny?
No.
It
That was
was-
a Pontiac Tempest.
Yeah.
No, it was in like
2000s.
Need for Speed,
Yeah.
like the old Need for Speeds though.
It was in like the early to mid 2000s, and then Pontiac made the Aztec, which was in Breaking Bad, and I think like sales of the Aztec went up, and then that was like their last gasp, and then like they just kind of died as a company. But like you said, because they
well, the
sponsored the
Aztec was a
podcast.
freaking ugly car though.
Yeah, it was in Breaking Bad, I think, as like a joke of like, look how bad this car is, and this guy has to drive it because his life is so terrible. And then people bought it because they're like, I want to be Walter White and like destroy my life. Anyways, welcome to the podcast. We're not going to talk about cars the whole time. Pontiac's gone the way
Brought
of the
to you
dodo.
by Poncat.
Yeah, Pontiac did sponsor this podcast, and that's part of why they went out of business. It was a poor
Fun fact:
decision for them.
you can get a Pontiac Solstice in Oklahoma City for $7,999.
What's the mileage?
Carfax. I'll get back to you. 82,000 miles. That's not,
Okay.
honestly not that bad.
It's serviceable. It's workable. We'll look into that. We're going to talk today about the Switch 2, which, not to be confused with the Switch Pro, which is a different, maybe never to exist thing. We'll get into that. Apparently due to arrive in 2024, according to some, I don't want to say leakers. There's a Nintendo expert basically saying it's coming, so we all need to prepare for it. We'll get into that. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the fallout from the Emmys. No, sorry. The Emmys haven't happened yet. The Golden Globes. Did you guys watch the Golden Globes? Are you guys Golden Globers? That's not a phrase.
No, we're not
I was
Globetrotters.
Playoff football implicationer.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
no.
As was I. I watched some NFL football, like a red-blooded American in my basement. You might even call it a man cave. I don't like to call it that. My wife in the upstairs of our house watched the Golden Globes. So I was getting updates on who won the Golden Globes. And also, before the actual like proper Golden Globes started, Nick Offerman won the award. We're going to be talking about Nick Offerman. He won an award for outstanding guest actor in a drama series. And he had some things to say about what's next for Bill and Frank. So we'll get into that. We're also going to talk about the Readyverse. And if you don't know what the Readyverse is, yeah, I didn't either until I read about this. And some would argue that it's upsetting. I guess for now, we'll leave that one at that. But let's talk a little bit about the Switch 2. Now, we've talked, I think, before about what may be next for the Switch. We're getting a little bit more into specifics. We, of course, haven't seen anything direct from Nintendo yet. There are rumors that there were some new hardware shown to developers at Gamescom last year, but fans themselves haven't been given anything, certainly not by Nintendo directly, but also not really by anyone else. We're hearing now that the Switch 2 is likely to arrive in 2024. It's likely to have a $400 price point, and I think this is the most important part, at least to me. The games are going to be $70. Now, let's talk about inflation. Like any self-respecting...
Aren't some of them already though? Like
Yeah,
they're
that's what I was gonna say.
$69.99.
Are they? Do I just never buy games at full price anymore?
Tears of the Kingdom came out at $70 and is still $70.
Yeah, I think when the Switch originally came out, they were like $59.99, but slowly over the last couple of years, some of them are releasing at like $70.
Yeah, let's talk about inflation.
Which I think that's happening on PlayStation and Xbox as well.
Oh yeah, well PS5
Games be
it's
expensive.
Yeah, PS5 is 70. I know that. I assume Xbox is 70, kind of just in keeping with PlayStation. I thought the Switch was still hanging out at 60, like the good old boys that they are.
There are some, like, I will say Nintendo is more apt. So, like, although I guess Sony did the same thing. I was going to say Nintendo is more apt to have, like, smaller games at a lower price point. Like, every now and then they'll drop a shorter game for $30. But I was going to say, nobody else does that. And Sony did that with Spider-Man Miles Morales. So, I don't know.
My problem with expensive games just in general is nothing, because for most consoles, they go cheaper over time, and you're just not day one. My problem with this for Nintendo is they do not lower prices ever.
Well, that's what I was just going to say is, Mario Kart, because I looked at Mario Kart just now, it's $60, and I think it's just been $60 since the beginning of time. They're AAA titles. They come out, they never lower price ever. Like you said, it just never happens. So at some point, the games are $60, but I'm sure you're right that since then they've been like, all right, $70 because people will pay that for Tears of the Kingdom.
My initial, my gut feel is to initially go, ew, whenever I see games at $70.
Yeah.
But we also have to remember, if you go back to the Xbox 360 era, which is now over a decade ago, games were selling for $60.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I mean, the amount of games, games are bigger now. They're better fidelity. There's more features. We have games that are hundreds of hours, which you could never even imagine having, except for Skyrim or something like that. Most Xbox 360 games that I'm thinking of were 15-hour playtime max. You had your Mass Effects, you had your Skyrims that ran a little bit longer or a lot bit longer, but the majority of games capped under 20 hours. And now a short game is the anomaly. So in the last decade, to have games only go up $10, that's not the worst, I guess.
Well,
it still feels icky, but
what also feels icky, I mean, it feels icky the other way too, because the implication is, like you said, games have only gone up $10 in price, and because of how much more we're getting per game now, it probably means that the people who are making these games are really being worked to the bone, and I don't love that, but yeah.
Well, that's when you hear about, crunch culture and
right.
Crazy layoffs, which I think 2023 was, I want to say, confirmed to be the worst video game industry layoff year ever.
I could believe that.
Just sad.
Yeah, I mean, I think the point you're making is that, as a value proposition, gamers are still making out like bandits. I mean, you think about, going to see a movie that's going to provide you, 2 hours worth of entertainment, and you're paying, over $10 for a ticket. For what the entertainment that games can provide you, you're getting so much more. The only thing that probably beats it in terms of entertainment value is probably books. But I don't know. You were saying, $70 sounds icky. As I've mentioned many times on the podcast, I'm always at least a few years behind. So I always get games on the cheap. I'm playing God of War 2018 right now, which it's great. That happened to cost me $3.99 because you're letting me borrow it. But the point being, I think when I played The Last of Us, I got the deluxe edition for $20 or something. So if you're willing to be patient, obviously you do just fine. Obviously certain games you're not willing to be patient and you can break the bank a little bit. But getting back to the Switch 2, I mean, the other thing they mentioned, I want your guys' take on this because I'm pretty sure the statement is correct, but it specifically mentioned that it's going to remain a console with handheld capability. And I want to read this, and it's a quote. Quote, and because there is Pokemon, and Pokemon is associated with handheld gaming, there is no way on earth Nintendo will drop the portability feature for their next big thing. End quote. Now,
I think that's fair.
Do you agree that Pokemon is inseparable from the handheld mode of gaming? Because I have no horse in the race. I don't play Pokemon.
So I do think it is inseparable. Once they put, games like Scarlet and Violet, and Legend of Arceus on the Switch, yes, it made it now have to remain a handheld console. But it's not to say that Nintendo can't just have a stationary console, right? We look at things like the Wii, we look at things like the GameCube. They've done it. But what did you notice? Pokemon was not really on those consoles as the standard game that we know it to be.
I think that if they split off into multiple devices, like if you had a handheld and then you had a home console, I think you're just bastardizing your sales. I don't think we live in a day and age anymore where you have people who are going to necessarily buy both of those unless you're talking about the adult consumer crowd. But like I look at people like my nephew who is under 10 years old and they have the dock, and I don't think I've ever seen him put it in the dock.
Well, here's the other side of it too, though.
I don't think though that they're even limited by power anymore, because like I'm sitting here next to my Steam Deck and it can run more powerful games than Pokemon. So as long as they jack up the features and the processors and the graphics card, which now we know handhelds can do, like I don't see a reason why they have to limit themselves and not have handheld mode. I think that sets them apart from the other two major console players at the moment.
Well, so that's certainly true. I want to go back to Pokemon though. I mean, why is that? I'm not saying you're wrong, because you're definitely not. It's the answer I was expecting. But like, what made Pokemon synonymous with handheld gaming? Is it just a matter of tradition and the fact that like when Red and Blue came out, it was a Game Boy thing, and it just forever will remain? Because
its intent is literally to have the kids sit quietly on the couch, right? And the parents can watch their shows, and that works. And in families and things like that, obviously, you know, we play Switch on the TV because we're gangsters, but like...
You are gangsters, it's true.
Yeah. But like it allows that flexibility. The other thing that I wanted to mention, though, with regards to, you know, having the dedicated console is they did the inverse of this, right? With the Switch Lite. And frankly, I take issue with some of the features that the Switch Lite offers, because it doesn't have the Joy-Cons and it's at a cheaper price point. You're basically kind of gatekeeping a lot of other move type games because you went with the cheaper Switch instead of getting the big one. And I think that stinks. So you got to have what you've introduced to the Switch and just level up.
Yeah,
and also to swing back around to Pokemon, I think what makes it a little bit more synonymous with handheld is the type of gameplay. I think turn-based gameplay lends itself a little bit better to handheld play.
I guess
even like you can have action games on a handheld device like my Steam Deck. I've played very high fidelity action adventure type games. Obviously on the Switch you can play the same, but there's something about a smaller screen and having I don't want to say less graphically intensive, because the new Pokemon games look nicer, but like the turn-based, almost simpler gameplay loop is just a little bit more manageable in handheld.
I guess I don't disagree with any of that. And I'm sure the type of game that it is a big part of it. But like, I guess my point is I don't see why Pokemon can't be equally as successful in like not a handheld mode. And it seems like that's what's being implied here. That part I don't agree with. I agree with, you know, the correlation. I just don't know that it has to exist, I guess is my point. But
I mean, I did play the last couple Pokemon games on my TV.
Right, and you were fine. You live and breathe here today.
It was great.
It didn't hit as good though when you undocked. It was like, you know what I'm saying?
I don't think I ever played it undocked. I can't remember playing it undocked. Maybe I did. I don't know.
I mean, I
did. He's saying I did.
Yeah, you
so
did.
Either way, there's no doubt that it remains, as you said, it remains the thing that differentiates them from the other consoles on the market, and I think that's to its credit. You know, certainly we've talked about many times before, it hasn't changed. Like the Switch is simply catering to a different market, and they're doing so very well. So I would think they're going to continue to do so. And you got me thinking about the Switch Lite now. Like I remember when the Switch Lite dropped, I really wanted one. I loved the idea of it, even though it was limiting. I don't know. They must have really marketed it really well, because I remember being like, "That's so cool." And it's like when you think about it now,
literally
it's like not
everyone.
that cool.
Everyone that bought it was like, I could play Animal Crossing. That was like its main driver in sales was Animal Crossing at the time.
Yeah, definitely kismet in that sense. I'm certainly happy with my full-size Switch. Switch 2. We want to know from you guys, what do you want from the Switch 2 that the Switch 1 doesn't have? Let us know. @OW86 is my handle on Twitter. We have @OW Techtic, @OW Nerdbomber, and our main show account at Online Warriors 1. Also, let us know, what you don't want the new Switch to do or what you don't care about it doing. I think there's a lot of people who, if they came out with a new Switch and they were like, it's basically the same thing with better graphics, people would be like, yeah, let's go. Like, it's been 7 years. I think we're probably at the point where people are waiting for a new one and they're going to have the money to plunk down for a new one. The other major question about we haven't really talked about, what are they going to pair with it as a console release? And it had better not be Metroid. I'm going to be pissed. Oh man, I'm going to lose it. I would be mad if that happened, joking aside, because I've been waiting for so long and they're going to make me buy a new one.
So here's a question for you. So I know, like, when the PlayStation 5 came out, and you're firmly in like the PlayStation boy camp. I don't know why I said it like that. But like,
me neither.
You happened into a Xbox Series X, which you ended up getting rid of.
It was the Xbox One.
You waited,
actually, but
oh, really?
It was.
That's right. Okay, yeah. You happened into Xbox One. You got rid of the PlayStation 5. You waited a little bit to get one.
I did.
Would the Switch, if it released with Metroid, be a day one buy, or would you still wait?
I would still wait, but I would be really angry. I would wait. I would definitely wait.
Okay.
But I'm
trying to see like what your breaking point is. Like, what is the hardware and what is the game that will make you like run out to stores day one and buy it?
I appreciate that question. Boy,
to some there may not be any, like there may not be a breaking point.
Yeah.
But like there for some, like for example, if there was a new console that was paired with the next Mass Effect with, this is important, with like Commander Shepard, you best believe, sorry Techtic, I would be
You're waiting in line,
getting out my credit card and waiting in line.
Yeah.
And like we already have all the consoles.
I don't know. I think it would need to have something that really makes it a step above. Like, for example, there's been parallels drawn to the 3DS. Well, if this Switch has like a dual screen or like large square display, sure, that would be something neat, something new. If it's just like, hey, our graphics are slightly better, here, give me $400, they could fuck right off.
Can we all stop pretending right now that the 3DS, like, did anybody ever use the 3D capabilities? Like, after a while, you turn that stuff off because it hurt your eyeballs.
I wasn't. Okay, fine. The DS is a better example. I was pointing specifically towards the dual screen.
Was fine. How often did you really use it?
And really, it's not so much the dual screen as used for button. I meant more like a big, like
novelty factor.
Yeah, yes, like a novelty. Like, we have cell phones now that have a folding screen. Can they make a folding screen where you have a full-sized screen?
A leap forward in capability.
Things like that
is what you're looking for. I mean, yeah, that's the other element of this discussion too. Is like, as a Switch user that I use it on a semi-regular basis.
That's like your favorite, I would say, console in your library of consoles, right?
100%. Well,
like the one that you more often gravitate towards.
That's correct. My library of consoles right now, to be clear, is the Switch and the PS5. And yeah, I gravitate towards the Switch much more. And like,
you have a PS4.
I have a PS4. I haven't played that thing in a long time. But like,
you also don't you still have your 360? Give yourself.
Well, okay, yeah. We can go all the way back to GameCube if you want. Like, I have all that stuff. I just like, my point is, I don't have any problem with the Switch right now. As I use it, and at the frequency and duration that I use it, like, it's perfect. So like, it would have to be something really, really eye-popping, kind of like Techtic's saying, for me to be like, okay, I need to get the Switch 2 ASAP, because it's going to raise my gaming quality of life that much more. I can't imagine what that would be, considering what the Switch does for me. I'm sure there's something, but like, I can't think of it right now. But yeah, if they drop Metroid Prime 4 with the Switch 2, I'm gonna go nuclear. It's not gonna be good for anybody. But let's not think about that now. Let's move on to The Last of Us. Speaking of video games, as we mentioned at the top of the show, Nick Offerman managed to win. Now, first of all, this is not the topic, but it really grinds my beans when they give out awards. So he won this award, I believe, on Saturday night, because his award did not make the actual show, because they had to make time for Joe Coy to like make the worst jokes. This is
oh my god,
the worst thing about award shows.
Like someone compiled his like quote unquote best worst jokes from his monologue. Awful. Terrible. None of them hit.
If you listeners, if there's a listener out there who is showing up to the Golden Globes to watch some hack do jokes, I would like to have a word with you, and it's not going to be pleasant for you. Like, who wants that? I'm sorry, I just have to soapbox in this one. No one's ever wanted that. Or if they did, it was like 20 years ago. We're over it. We just want to see the awards. That's all I care about. And I think that's anyone else I know. That's all I care about. Like, it just drives me nuts. So he got shunted into Saturday night and picked up his Emmy award. Sorry, or no, I'm confused now. This was an Emmy. So it was an Emmy, and the Golden Globes were yesterday, so the Emmys haven't happened yet. The point still stands. He got shunted out of the main Emmys show. Won this award, which is very well deserved. His first ever Emmy, which is weird because you would think he would have won for Parks and Rec. For Outstanding Guest Actor in a Drama Series. And he was asked if this is the end of Bill. Now, first of all, I hate that question. Like, a lot. And I think we're all going to be on the same page about this. I know Nerdbomber specifically picked this topic so she could rage. Is that a fair?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Just asking that question, regardless of what his answer is, which we'll get to in a second, it's a shitty question. And it flies in the face of what he as an actor is trying to do and what the show is trying to do. That's what I would argue. This episode of this show, the goal was to create a self-contained story that was, emotionally heartbreaking and powerful and had staying power as a self-contained vignette in the world of the story, the broader story of the show. The goal of that episode was not to be like, hey, these characters are great, you want to see more of them? That was the exact opposite of what the goal of that episode was. So for them to say, hey, come on, let's do more. I think that's the worst thing. And I'll read what Nick said before we get further into it, because there's a chance he was playing coy with it just to kind of give these people something, and he doesn't really want to do it. We can analyze that later. But anyways, quote, "It certainly has been pitched. I think we pitched a whole miniseries or a prequel of their lives before they meet each other. It could be a musical." I think he said that as a joke. But then he also said, quote, "We're not short on ideas. We'll just see what Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann come up with." End quote. So
yeah. Knowing his sense of humor, he was totally being tongue-in-cheek. And
about the musical part, sure,
definitely.
But
I think with all of it,
I don't know about that.
If I had been asked the same question, I would have said absolutely not. Bill and Frank live in all of us, and so they're always going to be a part of us. And then I would have walked away.
But I don't know, being so explicit, saying that it's been pitched, they've talked about it. I feel like there's some credibility there, and I hate it.
Well,
I hate it so much.
It's interesting because I think in the Hollywood of 5 or 10 years ago, if you read this, you'd be like, that is a joke. But with how things have evolved, considering what the MCU did to the rest of the industry, we can't treat things like this as a joke anymore. And Nerdbomber, I know you wanted to bring up The Walking Dead specifically too. I think they fell down this hole and they never came out.
They shot themselves in the foot. I mean, beyond the fact that the show introduced too many characters, killed off too many beloved original characters, and just became a shell of itself, it went on way too long. Then they started having all of these spin-offs, and who was watching them? I literally don't know a single person, and I would say Techtic and I were diehard The Walking Dead fans when the show...
For a while.
Yeah, for a while. We hung on for a while. Even when it was getting bad, we were we gotta see this through, The spinoffs, terrible, and I don't know a single person who watched them. But
people did.
I don't know if that's true.
On basic cable, not basic cable, but on cable, that's the differentiation I want to make here.
I think it killed AMC's credibility at the time. AMC, if you look back, AMC was becoming a powerhouse. They had Breaking Bad, they had The Walking Dead. There were a slew of other shows and franchises that they were starting around that time. And then they went all in on The Walking Dead and basically made way too much Walking Dead programming. A lot of it was just bad spin-offs. And do you know any AMC show that is on right now?
Well, let me just...
my theory is that it killed AMC's credibility as a maker of good television.
So Fear the Walking Dead which I believe was the first spinoff, it ran for 8 seasons. Shows that are not successful do not run for 8 seasons. And by successful, I mean puts asses in the seats and makes the network money. I'm sure people were watching this show. I agree with you. I agree entirely with what you're saying. I'm sure this show was crappy relative to the original. I'm sure it shouldn't have been made. But the bottom line is there are people out there who were just salivating for more content. They didn't care what it was. And they sat down and watched this. I don't know though. Like, I think the fact that was on cable and this is on HBO, I think that might play a pretty big role in like. I don't know that HBO spinoffs happen very much, and I don't know that they would be successful. I mean, I guess the obvious example of one that currently is House of the Dragon, but that feels pretty specifically like, I don't know, Game of Thrones.
And
was
that
so
had
amazing.
a lot of dead time between the end of Game of Thrones and the start of the spinoff. Like, there was a lot of time for people to digest, and there was still demand for Game of Thrones.
I don't want to just go ahead and poo all over this, because I think there is one way where we can have Bill and Frank come back in some fashion, and it's by leveraging what truly makes this show great, and that is these micro episodes. You can have them come back for various other micro episodes where, you know, there were other characters that they cross paths with, and then it feeds into still a greater story, but it cannot be a standalone spinoff show.
The only spinoff show that I want to see from The Last of Us is a small miniseries of capsule episodes. That's it. I don't think, and one of the things that's very interesting to me about The Last of Us is that for most of the characters, the development that you care about and the storytelling that you care about is all stuff that happens for the most part after the zombie apocalypse is taken over. You know, I don't really care about seeing these characters. Like, I don't want to see the weird bunker guy because he wasn't really even interesting until he met his partner. And I don't want to see some dude wandering around.
I thought he was plenty interesting.
Interesting for like the 10 minutes that we were introduced to him in that state, but could that sustain an entire prologue? Like an entire season? I don't think you could get anything out of that. What, a dude just sitting in his house, walking around in silence, checking his territory? Like, what?
So it is worth noting that, you know, you mentioned an anthology series kind of in the Last of Us universe. The Walking Dead also did that. And I know we talked about this on the podcast. I remember very vividly. Tales of the Walking Dead. One of the reasons I remember is because Terry Crews is in one of the episodes. It was 6 episodes limited series that came out. It sounds like they may make more of these, which I guess shouldn't be surprising considering what we're talking about. I do think that I like the idea, well, I don't dislike the idea of working the character into future episodes in these micro stories that you mentioned, Techtic. I don't really know in the case of Bill or Frank how that would look or how that would happen, you know, because of what you guys were saying about like, who do people want to see the before times in this universe really that much? If you're me, I'm more concerned with what's happening in the now. I desperately do not want them to be like, oh, the adventures of Bill and Frank in the Last of Us universe. I don't even know what the show would be called. What would it be called?
I like what you said, the adventures of, because it gives homage to the adventures of Bill and Ted.
Yeah. Well, I doubt that there might be some copyright issues there. Like this is saddening for sure.
But my point is, you can have them pop up here and there, if, like I said, as a means to introducing other characters, right? They couldn't have been the only ones to go through Bill and Frank's area, right? So there had to have been more people that passed by, maybe caused trouble. Maybe there's even perspective of the people that were trying to loot his area, right? So there is other spinoffs where you can do it, where you can bring them back, but I think they've exhausted their story arc.
Yeah, here's another element of this is like you're talking about establishing crossover characters and bigger things. That the bottom line is the basic story of Bill and Frank had source material. Was it greatly embellished? Yes, but like there was a nugget of an idea within the original game. if you introduce a bunch more characters, then you're diluting that, and you're moving away from what made the show so good in its first season. I think, like, it just, I don't know, you're taking away from what the great stories that exist already. I just don't know why you would do that. You know,
and there's much better content to pull from. I mean, like, I think for me, I think a huge miss of stories that we got like kernels about when we played the game was like the hospital at the end, right? They could have did a backstory on how they got to just be so accepting of what they were doing there, right? You don't just go, well, let's just start chopping. You know, there's an arc there, and that was an opportunity I think that they missed to. You could have started to empathize with the quote villain if they put a backstory on those people, right?
Or even like give me a bottle episode about one of the Fireflies and how, like, I know we kind of see Ellie in like Firefly training, not Firefly training.
Well, like, yeah, she's with the Fireflies.
Yeah, but like, I want to see a non-related to the direct story person, you know, somebody that you see in the game, but who really isn't like that pivotal player. Like, they are people in this universe, and like, give me a little bit of a story about them too.
So I do think that, and you know, without getting into specifics, there are elements of what you guys have both just said. Neither of you have played the second game yet.
No, it's on the dock.
The second game gives you a lot. It gives you some of that. I think. And that's the other thing about this too, is that like they're talking about doing spin-offs. You can really open up the throttle on the second season. And if you want to do spin-offs and like really act on a bunch more characters at once, you'll get the opportunity to do that. But like these characters that were in the first game, leave them be. Like the cast that shows up in the second season, as you will see either when you play the game or when you watch the show, like there's opportunity to delve into some of the questions you guys just asked and to expand the field of characters that can interact with one another, which maybe is what people
really
want.
Must have Nick Offerman, put a wig on him and say he's a different character.
Yeah, it's an option. Or just go back and watch reruns of Parks and Rec for the millionth time, like I often do. Either way, don't ask for a Bill and Frank standalone. I just hate this idea so much. And I know that you do too, Nerdbomber. Techtic, you're more forgiving than I want you to be. I'm going to be honest.
Oh no, I'm 100% anti. But if they want to like give the, you know, be fan servicey, there's ways to do it without destroying what they've done.
Completely agreed. And you know, they've already delivered a lot of fan service too. Like I guess what you mean is fan service for the fans of the TV show, not the game. But like, yeah, it's a symptom of the recent Hollywood cancer of like, if a story is good, just let it be good and move on to the next thing. Don't try and milk it. Because milking stuff is gross. If there's one thing I could leave you with, it's that. Milking stuff is gross. So that brings us to the midpoint of the episode. This is the point in the show where I do what I always do, which is shout out our fantastic Patreon producer, Mr. Steven Keller. Steven's been with the show for a while. He's been supporting us at the highest of our 3 levels on our Patreon. As a result, he gets this producer shout out every episode. He gets input into the weekly game segment, which unbelievably I'm hosting this week. He gets access to the monthly secret segment and vlog, of course, and he gets the occasional guest spot on the show. He gets all of these things as a night level subscriber on our Patreon. There's also a Squire level of support, which gets you access to the monthly secret segment and vlog, and a page level, which gets you access to the monthly secret segment. For the details on any and all of those levels of support, you can head over to patreon.com/onlinewarriorspodcast. Get the details there. Say hi to us. Say hi to Steven. Consider giving back to this show that you've hopefully been listening to for a long time now. So thanks again to Steven. We'll take a short break before coming back to talk about the Readyverse, and I will explain what that means. But before that, here's a word from another podcast.
Hi, I'm Kevin DeCristofano.
And I'm Sean Flanagan.
And we are the Ninja Turtle Nerds, your weekly podcast covering the Ninja Turtle comic book series one issue at a time. Plus the video games, the cartoon show, the VHS tapes. If it's Ninja Turtles, we'll cover it. Ninja Turtle Nerds is available wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, welcome back. We're going to talk about the Readyverse. Now, first of all, did you guys watch Ready Player One? We all read the book, I believe. Or at least I know Nerdbomber and I did. Techtic, did you also read it?
Yes.
Did you watch the movie?
Yes.
Did you fall asleep during the movie like I did?
No.
Okay. I fell asleep during this movie. Let me start by saying that. But I did read the book in its entirety. Didn't fall asleep during that. Or if I did, when I woke back up, I continued where I left off. That's the great thing about books. So the news here, Futureverse, which first of all, amazing company name. It's a 10 out of 10 from me. Love that name. It's a leading AI and metaverse technology and content company. They announced that they are forming Readyverse Studios. So this is being formed in conjunction with Ernest Cline, who is the author of Ready Player One, and Dan Farah, who was Ready Player One film producer. The idea is, it seems like, to basically make the Oasis. I don't know if that might be overstating it a bit, but the Readyverse is described as, and I'm quoting now, a dynamic interactive platform of interconnected digital experiences. So they've partnered with Warner Brothers Discovery to exclusively bring the Ready Player One franchise to the metaverse across Web3. They're maintaining exclusive Web3 rights to all future IPs from the legendary futurist Ernest Cline. Additional brands and franchises will be joining the Readyverse soon. So, for those who have not seen Ready Player One, the Oasis is basically this digital world in which many, many IPs can exist at once. I mean, is that might be an oversimplification of what it is. Not knowing much about what the Futureverse does and what the Readyverse will do, I don't know. Like, this seems kind of cool, but the main thing I've seen...
It seems like exactly what the book was warning us against, though.
Yes.
No?
Yes. So the main point of feedback I've seen on this is, and mostly it's, it's showing this as an example, but also saying that this happens constantly in the tech field, which it does, which is like companies come forward and basically say, like, we've created the Panopticon thing from this book that says don't create it. But we have it now, and look how cool it is. Like, it seems like that's happening a lot. I mean, there are countless pieces of media, Black Mirror and many other things, that are basically like, hey, technology past a certain point is bad. And yeah,
So I get that this is different because it's VR, but like, I'm going to just throw some what ifs.
Yeah, but the world in Ready Player One was VR.
Well, let me finish what I'm saying, and then you know what I'm saying.
Okay.
But like, let's say you have all these different IPs, right, in this large area. Let's, for argument's sake, let's call it a battlefield, right? And then, like, what if you can like shoot the other people and like do like a battle royale kind of thing with all these different IPs? Wouldn't that be crazy? It's called Fortnite. So like, we're already like basically there with some other games. The only thing is it's not VR. So like, who's asking for this? And if people want that kind of experience, they can just play that.
I would argue that this already kind of exists because Big Daddy Zuck made it too. Horizon Worlds or whatever, Meta Horizon. It's not quite the same. Obviously, you don't really have the power of IPs. But if any of you have ever dabbled in it, it's basically this open world. Like, you can make environments, you can make games, you can build sculptures, you can hold concerts. Like, they're already kind of doing this. Now there's going to be like competing worlds.
Can I just say,
I don't know.
The term meta is doing so much heavy lifting these days, it must be exhausted, that word. Like...
Well, Meta is the brand in this case. The VR world I'm referring to is Meta Company's Horizon VR or whatever. Horizon Worlds.
The thing about, and like Ready Player One, I really enjoyed the book. Don't get me wrong. It's a great like treasure hunt situation. You could poke a lot of holes in, like, take for example what Techtic said. Oh, there's a battlefield and you can be any character and you can do anything and fight other people. How do you... There's such thing as a good structure to a game and, like, I don't know, rules? Like, there are certain fictional characters that if you can realize them and be them in this Futureverse or this Readyverse, you're just too powerful for anyone else to kill you. So assuming it's like a combat-based game, I guess we're kind of jumping, a couple of steps here. But like, you at some point you have to hem it in. So like, I think it's very nice from an investor standpoint to basically say, hey, we're making the thing from Ready Player One. Anyone can be anything. It's this amazing digital universe in which there's a million IPs and everyone can have a good time.
And if you want to be more powerful, you pay more money.
Well, there's that.
And capitalism.
But there's that. But there's also like at some point, the Oasis was fictional, and like it wouldn't be. I don't think it would be a sustainable environment for people to like go and enjoy themselves, because people would ruin it. And like if there weren't a set of basic rules on how it would work, and like if there weren't restrictions on things you could realize, it just wouldn't work. Like that's the other thing that I think this is really cool, like corporate speak of like, look at what we're doing. You guys all saw the movie, right? That was awesome. It's like, well, it's not going to be that awesome when it all crumbles around you. I don't know. Maybe Futureverse knows more than I do. But like we were saying before, it's like one of the points of Ready Player One is like, hey, the Oasis kind of sucks, and like you should exist outside of it. It's cool to exist outside of it. And now this tech company is like, it's only cool to exist inside of it. So, yeah, I don't know. And like, credit to like the people of the world for kind of seeing right through that. Like when this news dropped, like I said, people were like, yeah, this seems really crappy. Why would they do this? There's
one of the things I struggle with VR in general. Like VR technology is super cool. Don't get me wrong. Like we own 2 different VR headsets. Their technology still has a long way to go, but like what you can do with it is fairly neat. Like I have attended a fake concert in Horizon World, and it wasn't like being there. I'm just going to be honest with you. It was not the same, but it was a neat experience. I don't think, though, anything like trying to prompt you to spend most of your time in a VR headset is just healthy.
Well,
I think there's a difference between video games on a flat static screen and like the idea that we should be building these universes where we come home from work and then all of our time outside of, our jobs is just in a VR headset. I think that's just so that it really like screams dystopian nightmare.
I mean, we're there, right? Too.
We're not there.
All
yet.
of these things, we're there. It's just doom scrolling instead of VR headset.
But I can doom scroll and have real life in my periphery.
Right. It's a matter of, because the other component here in conjunction with VR is AI, and like we know there's a lot of conversation going on surrounding AI right now, and rightfully so, about like how dangerous it can be. If you combine those two things, you're really talking about redefining what reality is for people, or for all people. When this technology gets to a certain level of good, then is the real world, or is the Oasis / Readyverse the real world? If you leave it up for people to decide, some people will choose the Readyverse, and then where are you? It's. I'm not saying we're at the doorstep of that. There's a lot of technological advances that have to happen before we get there. But like, this is the latest cobblestone on the road that leads there.
It feels like we're trending towards the conversation of, if a civilization is advanced enough to make a simulation that is so advanced that the people in the simulation don't know they're in the simulation, then how do you not know that you yourself is not in a simulation? That's where it feels like we're trending towards.
And it sounds like you've maybe given this some thought before. Have you ever heard that?
Oh, this is a simulation.
You think we're in a simulation right
100%, now? 100%, 150%.
What makes you... Let's just set the topic aside for a second, because I think we're basically done with that anyways. What makes you feel that way?
Too many glitches.
Okay. You mean like miracles? Would you consider a miracle to be a glitch?
No. Glitches, duplications, as well as there's this sense that the world is against me, and it's this overwhelming sense that it can't.
Sounds like anxiety.
It can't just be natural. It has to be programmed.
Interesting. I do not think the world is a simulation. Let me just state my opinion. I'm not going to like fight you on this.
This is a second Cuban bet, like a Cuban sandwich. Cubano, if I may.
Yeah. When one of us wins this bet, I'm sure we'll be in a position to buy the other a Cuban sandwich. Nerdbomber, where do you fall on this? If you don't mind my asking, it's a personal question, but do you think we're in a simulation?
We're not in a simulation.
I don't think we're in a simulation. Like, I think it would be cool to find out that we are. Also, maybe like terrifying and panic inducing.
Would it
be panic inducing?
Would it be cool?
I think it would probably be.
I feel like I'd have an anxiety attack.
Yeah, but I mean, come on. I've
I would
seen the Matrix.
just embrace it, and then I just go full Neo. I'd be like, oh, okay. Let me open up the command prompt right quick.
Right, exactly. I don't think we're in a simulation. I've heard other podcasters talk about, like, there's this one guy I listened to, he basically says, like, he thinks the secret to realizing that you're or to getting out of the simulation is realizing that you're in the simulation and, like, doing something to prove to the creators that you truly know that you are in a simulation. So, Techtic, if you want to get out, you just need to prove to the code overlords that you know that you're in a simulation, because it seems like you know.
But then we need to find a third co-host.
No, but that's the thing.
Oh, no.
He'd still be here, but it wouldn't actually be him. It would be like a bot. And maybe he's already done that.
Reset.
Maybe he's
Soft
already
reset.
Maybe he's already out. Maybe we're not even talking to the real Techtic, the one that you met and married. Maybe like 3 years ago, he realized I'm in a simulation.
Remember,
Popped
I
out.
didn't have back hair when you married me. This is the reset.
Okay, gross.
All right.
Anyways, yeah, the Readyverse, not on the immediate horizon, but apparently it's coming. So if you were a fan of Ready Player One or Ready Player Two, which I never read, maybe consider giving it a look if you're up on what the Futureverse has got going on. It's time for What Are You Up To Wednesday. This is the part of the show where we talk.
What are you up to Wednesday?
It's been a while for us in the jingle. I thought it had gone the way of the dodo, but it seems like it's back, and I'm happy for it.
It depends on how I'm feeling that day. Gotta be honest.
Well, you're feeling good today, apparently. I'm going to go first today, because I have what I think is a very exciting update. Maybe not for you guys, but I think just for the world.
Horseradish cheese, is that your epiphany?
No, you guys know that I'm a Christmas guy. Maybe you know that. I don't know. I think Techtic and Nerdbomber know that. Maybe the listeners don't. I'm a Christmas guy, I'm into Christmas. I'm also into movies.
They call him Saint Nick.
They call me Saint Nick. I'm also into movies. And in particular, like, I pay attention to, like, the Oscars every year, and, like, I like to try and watch a lot of the movies that are up for Oscars or Golden Globes. One of the movies that's been talked about a lot came out, I believe, in October. It is ostensibly a Christmas movie, although Alexander Payne takes issue with that characterization. It's a movie called The Holdovers. This is a movie directed by Alexander Payne, who I just mentioned, starring Paul Giamatti, Dominic Sessa, and Divine Joy Randolph. It's a drama. Oh, okay. It says it's a comedy, but it's a drama. Let me start by saying that. It's really good. I watched that over the weekend. They're saying it might win Best Picture, or at least will be nominated. I think it's fantastic. I don't know if I've watched enough movies from this year yet to say whether it will win. I think it's going to win Best Picture, but I haven't seen many of the other movies that are up for Best Picture. In fact, the Best Picture list hasn't even come out yet, but The Holdovers is going to be on there. I thought it was great. It was funny, but in a very poignant way. It's a very sad movie. But I like a sad movie every once in a while. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Marriage Story, which I really liked, and that came out like 2 or 3 years ago. So definitely recommend. Just wanted to shout out that I watched all of that. And then I started watching a show. I don't know if I'm going to stick with it, though. It's a show called Love and Death. This is a show on HBO Max starring Elizabeth Olsen, in which she has an affair with Jesse Plemons. And then somewhere along the line, someone dies. I don't think either one of them. I don't really remember the details. I think it might be Jesse Plemons' wife. Based on a true story. What I will say is they're both great. I'm only 1 episode in, so I don't know if I'm going to stick with the show yet, but pretty interesting so far. Other than that, still playing God of War, but I'm not really going to get into that because I've talked about it a bunch. I think I'm getting close to the end, but it's a little bit hard to say just by the nature of the game. So yeah, that kind of wraps things up for me. Which of you guys wants to go next? I don't usually ask, but I'll open the floor.
I will go.
Techtic will go.
Okay, so the main thing I want to talk about is we started watching a show called Shoresy, which, if you don't know what Shoresy is, it's sort of a spin-off show of Letterkenny. It's on Hulu, and there's this character in Letterkenny called Shoresy, and he's always just at the hockey rink giving people a hard time. And they made this whole show surrounding this hockey player that does exactly that, gives people a hard time, with the plot being his team's goal is to go completely undefeated and never lose, to kind of boost up their hockey club and rally the fans, is basically the whole premise of the show. And it's kind of dumb, but there's a lot of like fantastic one-liner jokes that, like, if you're looking for a mind-numbing laugh that just kind of helps you just not be miserable, that's helps you get through the simulation, you know? That's kind of what I'm after, and it's fantastic. So I recommend checking out Shoresy. I think it's better than the later seasons of Letterkenny.
There's a lot of lingerie shots, though, for no reason. Like, if it focused a little bit more, like, for my taste, personally.
Yeah, so it's kind of good.
If it focused more on the hockey aspect, like, it's the hockey aspect of it is.
Okay, so just to clarify, Techtic is pro the lingerie shots. You are anti.
I try not to like stare. I'll we eat dinner when we're watching this, so I'll be like, oh yeah, this is good pizza, and look down. You know, I gotta have respect. You know, I'm a married man here.
That's true. Last I checked.
But yeah, I do agree with her. There is kind of like overkill of lingerie shots. It definitely knows their audience, I guess. But overall, like I said, it's a dumb show, easy laughs, entertaining. So I'd check it out.
Easy laughs are great. Never a better time for easy laughs in the dark, cold dead of winter. Cheers, man. Anything else, or should we swing it over to Nerdbomber to close us out?
We can swing it over.
Swing it over.
Whip, whip. So I finished Spider-Man 2. I can't remember if I had finished it by last week's episode, but I did finish it, and it was very good, and it was solid. I started playing Stray, the kitty cat game. I'm not super far into that, though. So I maybe only have like 45 minutes, and then it just got busy, and we haven't gotten a chance to have a lot of video game time since then. But what I do love about Stray so far is that there is a meow button, and you meow on command, and it's just so satisfying.
There's got to be a meow button. Otherwise, what are we even doing here?
So far, it's a very interesting aesthetic and world, and I'm interested to learn more. But 45 minutes in, I don't really know a whole lot about what's going on. I'm just a stray kitty cat in this like dystopian, dead-looking village that I've dropped into. So we'll report back as I get further into that. And then we also...
Are you talking... are there like... Is it like puzzly? Because I remember this game, we talked about it when it was first...
It is.
Okay. Interesting.
The beginning of the game, right now, it's a little bit more platformy than anything else. But from what I've heard and what I understand of the game is that it becomes like platformy puzzles and whatnot and things to solve. So I'm looking forward to it.
Is cat traversal as fun as it sounds like it should be? Based on your 45 minutes?
It is quite fun. Like, I see a box and I can hop on said box and I'm like, yo. Actually, one of my favorite things so far, and this is like a very tertiary game mechanic. It really doesn't influence anything to do with the game. But if you get to like a grassy post, or if you come across a carpet, you can actually like claw at it, you know, scratching post wise. But you use the adaptive triggers if you're playing on PlayStation 5, so you actually get like the force feedback as if you're actually like clawing the thing, and it's weirdly satisfying.
It sounds like it would make me uncomfortable, if anything. You
would think, but like you have to embody the cat in you.
Now, how often when you're traversing this universe do you have to stop and eat something that you're not supposed to be eating? Because my cat does that all the time. He's trying to eat these fake plants in our house, and we can't get him to stop. So if the game gives you any advice for how to deal with that, just let me know.
I'll keep you posted. I haven't come across any fake plants to eat, but if I do, I'll keep you posted. And if I come up with any cat tips.
We tried like this.
I'll be in the mind of a cat.
We tried this bitter cherry spray, and we honestly might have made him want to eat the fake plants more. We're not sure. So anyways.
Then we also played a board game, Kingdom Hearts Perilous Pursuit, which is very fun, mentally addicting, very difficult. So you guys know I'm obsessed with Kingdom Hearts, and essentially the gist of this game is that it's a co-op game, and you pick a character, and each character, they have different abilities that come at different like ease levels. So you roll a dice, and you have to basically ready up your attack or like shield, or you can collect a card, and each character, it takes different difficulty or different number of dice to activate that specific ability. So like Donald Duck in the game, he's a little bit more of a support character. So in order to attack with Donald Duck, you need to roll more dice than if you're just, throwing up a shield. If you're, Sora or Riku, who's a more attack-minded character in the game, it's very easy to attack, but things like, drawing card or distracting the Heartless comes a little bit more difficultly. The point of the game is you work together cooperatively to try to free 6 worlds, Disney worlds, from the Heartless. And it is very fun. I really like the dice rolling mechanic. It's got like shades of Yahtzee, where you roll dice and you can either like activate different, actions, or you can like activate actions on your cooperative partners board. And it's just very simple yet fun, and there's some strategy behind it, but it is very difficult. They have made it very easy for the Heartless to win. And I think that might be a reason why it's also very addicting, though. Like, we have yet to win this game. And I think I'm just like stewing over why we can't win this game. And I think there are probably some modifiers that would make it a little bit more even, like house rules that we might eventually implement. But it is quite difficult. They do give, the game, I don't want to call it the computer because this is a board game, but they give like the game player a big advantage over you. And it does make it hard.
You can start the game and on your first turn lose.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Before you got a chance to even build up your character attacks.
So I think there's maybe some modifications in house rules that might be coming, but we've played it, oh gosh, I don't know, like 5 different times, different combos of characters. And I'm probably not describing it super well, but it's basically a dice rolling strategy type game. And I don't know, I like it. I also like Kingdom Hearts, so there's that. And then the last quick note is we watched Dumb Money, which is the movie about the GameStop stonk debacle from, God, was that last year or the year before?
I think it was 2021. I don't remember for sure.
It was quite good.
I love Paul Dano. That guy rules.
It was a good watch. I would recommend it.
I wish I followed, I'm not mad about it because I didn't have enough shares in GameStop at the time, but I wish I I'm always on Reddit for various forums and things like that, specifically my interests, like games, Game Boys and coding and things like that. But I wish I just was like, hey, Reddit, what's going on with GameStop? And didn't think to do that. Instead, I listened to you.
Yeah, that was really stupid of you. Never listen to me. I hope you learned something.
I didn't lose a lot of money, like I said, only probably about $1,200, but
I also like
a small amount of money.
I like Shailene Woodley, not personally, but as an actress. I think she's good. I believe she's also in that movie.
She was.
I will have to check that one out. That brings us to Quiztown. And I'm the mayor of Quiztown this week. I'm 1-0. Nerdbomber is 0-1. Techtic is 0-0. Steven also 0-0. Pretty fresh start here. We're in week 2 of this season, and I'm guaranteed to not lose again. So that's a pretty good feeling. The quiz topic this week is Isaac Asimov. For those that don't know about
that guy.
Isaac, I just called him Isaac Asimov. For those that don't know about Isaac Asimov, you will learn about him over the next 5 numerical questions and potentially 1 bonus question. All this Price is Right style, you know the drill. We're going to give Nerdbomber the early advantage, so Techtic will go first since Nerdbomber is 0-1. Without further ado, when was Isaac Asimov born? Also, you get 1 + 1 or an answer of 1 per quiz, as per typical quiz rules.
His stuff is considered classic, but that doesn't really.
You don't. You remember. You go second. Tactic goes first. Make sure you're not going to blurt names out.
His stuff is considered classic,
but that doesn't really help.
That doesn't really help me. I'm gonna say 1920.
Jesus times.
Just a brutal start for Nerdbomber. Couldn't have been any worse.
Really? No.
He was born January 2nd, 1920.
Shut your mouth.
I will leave my mouth open. Techtic off to a strong start. And yeah,
that wasted my.
You wasted your one. That was your Jesus times answer. That was a absolutely brutal turn of events. Hopefully you can claw your way back after that. Well, moving on. Nerdbomber will go first for this question. One of the more recent Asimov pieces of media that's come out is a show called Foundation on Apple TV Plus. I believe it was just renewed for its third season. What is the average tomato meter score for Foundation? So just across the entire show, aggregating all episodes, what is its current critics' tomato meter score? I know you love the tomato meter, Nerdbomber, so I made sure you went first on this question.
87%.
This didn't do so well on the tomato meter as you'd think. This actually got only a 42.
Oh boy. Nerdbomber was 86%.
Shut up.
So Techtic gets another point. Nerdbomber's on the ropes, having the worst quiz of her life. I mean, it's at this point, that's about the state of things. I'm going to try and give you...
Play a scary game.
I'm going to give you a softball here. Techtic goes first, but he's going to flub it, and it's going to be all yours. One of my favorite movies of the early 2000s, or as I like to call it, the Will Smith era of filmmaking. I, Robot is based on the works of Isaac Asimov, or at least inspired by. What's the runtime of I, Robot? You have to have seen this movie. It's on basic cable like a jillion times. What's the runtime in minutes of the hit 2004 Will Smith classic, I, Robot?
In minutes, you said?
In minutes.
This is 147 minutes.
Do you think it's over 2 hours? No, the 90s were more reasonable. Although they weren't that reasonable. Titanic was a behemoth. 90 minutes.
All right, you're on the board. I wish it was 147 minutes. That'd be awesome. I wanted more of that movie. It was 115
Felt like it was
minutes.
longer.
It was almost 2 hours, which I agree that back in the early 2000s, that was a little bit on the long side, but it wasn't over 2 hours. Movies over 2 hours were pretty rare. Like Titanic, I think, was a bit of a rarity.
Well, because then you had to put them on multiple VHS tapes.
Well, this was 2004, so DVDs were fully a thing. And in fact, I had the DVD for iRobot when I was...
People were still collecting VHSs, right?
Yeah, you realize we're older than you think we are.
I have no idea if they...
You're like, oh, back in the day, that was VHS. No, back in the day was DVDs.
I remember specifically, and that's tangent, but like we had the Armageddon and Titanic VHS sets, and they were multiple VHS tapes.
And those were both movies in the 90s. iRobot. We're in the Will Smith era here. This was when DVDs came out. Okay, you're on the board though. That's the good news. So it's now 2-1. Isaac Asimov was particularly prolific in his writing. How many short stories did he write? Short story is a staple for any good science fiction writer.
69.
Nice.
70.
Techtic takes it home. He wrote 383. So
I just wanted to say 69.
quite a few more. Yeah, I know it was...
I just wanted to say 7.
You had fun with it. I'll give you that. Techtic plays the strategery in the correct way. And as a result... he brings home the bacon, so to speak. I'll do my last question anyways, because it's my favorite one. Isaac Clarke, the protagonist from the video game Dead Space, who many of you may know is like my favorite game ever, was named partially after Isaac Asimov. The last name Clarke comes from Arthur C. Clarke, also a big deal in the science fiction writing universe. In what year did Dead Space come out?
This was 2007?
You loved Dead Space when I met you.
You're trying to back it out from me. I love that.
I am. Nah. I'm going to say 2000, but I think that's wrong.
Boy, your perception of time needs some
work. He kind of like locked in, like he put me in a little bit of a corner.
He did.
There.
He almost nailed it. You couldn't plus one him, so you weren't going to get it. It was 2008.
Yeah.
But 2000, I mean, we're back in like the N64 era in 2000.
I was trying. Well, I knew I couldn't. It was before a specific time, but then it was a small window, and it was either like +1 or +2 him, which +2 feels dirty, so I didn't want to do that. So I was like, well,
I mean, you could have. You still would have lost.
Still would have lost.
well, then I was just hoping that maybe it was like the year before, so I was just giving myself a wide range.
So Nerdbomber, we'll start shopping a scary game for you to play. Techtic moves to 1-0.
After you watch Hawkeye.
After I watch Hawkeye. Techtic moves to 1-0. You moved to 0-2. I remain at 1-0. Steven at 0-0. And we'll pick this up next week with Techtic administering the quiz once again. Topic TBD by our Patreon producers. We want to thank you all again for joining us on this week's episode of the Online Warriors podcast. If you liked what you listened to, you can head over to Apple Podcasts, leave us a review there, hit us up on Twitter at the handles mentioned earlier in the episode, or head over to Patreon, patreon.com/onlinewarriorspodcast. Consider giving back to the show, and consider telling us what you think on any of those platforms. We will see you all next week. In the meantime, stay safe. Keep on podcasting.